My name is Daniel Cross. I'm a geophysicist. Ice-penetrating radar, subglacial mapping, thermal imaging. That's been my life for nearly 15 years. I've worked in the Arctic, the Siberian tundra, deep-sea survey vessels, oil fields, disaster zones. If there was ground no one wanted to touch, I was usually paid to touch it. I didn't grow up obsessed with mysteries or ancient civilizations. I cared about data, about what could be measured, proven, logged. That's why the email confused me. It didn't come through any academic channel, no university header, no government domain. Just a short message from a private logistics contractor I'd never heard of. We've been given your name by 2 independent institutions. We are assembling a small research unit for a short-term Antarctic deployment. High compensation, full confidentiality, specialized equipment required. Are you interested? Normally, I delete things like that, but attached to the email was a single file, a low-resolution satellite image, and something about it made my stomach tighten. It showed a section of Antarctica I knew well, Queen Maud Land, one of the most heavily surveyed regions on the continent. Thousands of passes, decades of data. Yet the image was marked with a red square. Inside the square was a shadow, a perfect, unnatural shadow. 4 straight edges, symmetrical, rising from the ice. A shape Antarctica does not make. I zoomed in until the pixels broke apart. The file name was anomaly_7b. I replied within 10 minutes. 2 days later, I was on a call with 3 people whose cameras never turned on. They didn't introduce themselves by name. They didn't describe who was funding the expedition. They only told me this. A thermal satellite had picked up a heat bloom beneath nearly a mile of ice. A non-geological heat source. Perfectly isolated, perfectly stable. And when deeper scans were run, the ice above it didn't read like fractured rock. It read like empty space, a void, a cavern. They were assembling a team to reach it. Not to publish, not to announce, to verify. They offered me more money than I had made in the last 3 years combined. They also sent a contract. It was the thickest NDA I've ever seen. Clauses about psychological evaluation. Clauses about seizure of equipment. Clauses stating that all collected data would become non-humanitarian proprietary material. That wording bothered me. So did the last page. It didn't talk about injury. It talked about containment failure. I almost walked away. What stopped me was a second attachment, a radar slice, cross-section through the ice. You could see the layers clearly, centuries of snowfall compressed into pale bands. And then, deep below them, a perfect triangle, not a peak, not a ridge, a triangular void with sharp internal angles, resting on a flat base, carved space. Something had displaced the ice, and ice doesn't do that. 3 weeks later, I was in Punta Arenas, Chile, standing on a frozen runway at 2 a.m, staring at a transport plane with its markings painted over. There were 7 of us. No small talk, no photos, just equipment crates and people who didn't look at one another. Our team consisted of 2 engineers, a medical officer, a structural specialist, a cryo drilling supervisor, a communications tech, and me. No archaeologists, no historians. That should have told me everything. The flight to the continent took 13 hours, most of it in silence. No windows, no in-flight map. Just the low, continuous thunder of engines and the awareness that we were moving somewhere people were not meant to go. When we finally landed, the cold was violent, not just low temperature, pressure. Like the air itself was heavier. We were transferred to track transports and driven inland for nearly 8 hours No landmarks, no mountains. Just white and sky and the faint sense of motion. At 1940 local time, the convoy stopped, in the middle of nowhere. There was nothing to see, no facility, no station, no antenna. Then the ice in front of us began to lower, not melt, lower. A circular section of snow and packed ice descending smoothly into the ground like an elevator. Warm air rose out of the opening. That was the moment I realized this expedition did not start in Antarctica. It ended here. And whatever built what we were about to enter had been here long before the ice. The opening was wider than a football field, perfectly circular. Its edges were smooth, reinforced with some dark metallic material embedded into the ice itself. Not bolted, not poured, grown into it, like the ice had formed around something that was already there. Lights ignited along the inner wall as the platform finished lowering. Not floodlights, thin lines, white-blue, evenly spaced, no visible fixtures, no visible power source. The air rising out of the shaft was warm, not heated air warm, body warm, alive warm. We stood there for almost a full minute before anyone moved. Then one of the engineers muttered, "Jesus Christ," under his breath. Our handler, the only one who had spoken to us since Chile, raised his hand and gave a simple gesture. "Proceed." The vehicles rolled forward first, then us. As the platform began descending again, the world above slowly vanished. White became grey. Grey became black. The only light left was the thin glowing bands in the shaft wall and the soft illumination from our suit lamps. The ice didn't look like ice anymore. As we went down, it became clearer, striated, layered, reinforced, not naturally compacted, engineered. Marks ran through it, subtle patterns, long, shallow grooves that curved in repeating sequences, spiraling around the shaft. I leaned closer, running my glove along one. It was warm. The descent took 12 minutes. No vibration, no sound except our own breathing. At around 8 minutes, my instruments began to misbehave. Compass spun uselessly. Gyro drifted. Depth readings lagged behind actual descent. Then the comms tech quietly said, "I'm getting echoes." "From what?" the structural specialist asked. He didn't answer right away. "From below, but not like a cavern, like walls, lots of them." The platform slowed, the lights intensified, and then the shaft opened. We descended into a space so large my brain couldn't immediately process it. A cavern would have had curves, rock, irregularity. This didn't. It was a chamber, vast, angular. The ceiling was lost in darkness. The floor vanished beneath a thin layer of drifting mist. And in the center rose a pyramid, not stone, not metal, something between both. Black, but not reflective, absorbing light rather than bouncing it. Each face was perfectly smooth, except for thousands of shallow symbols carved across its surface. They weren't hieroglyphs, they weren't letters. They looked like shallow fractures arranged deliberately into patterns. The structure was enormous, at least 600 feet tall from what we could judge. And it wasn't sitting on the ground. It was suspended, hovering several meters above a circular base that glowed faintly beneath it. No supports, no cables, no visible mechanism, just floating. The moment my boots touched the floor, I felt it. A pressure in my skull, not pain, orientation, like walking into the edge of a powerful magnetic field. My ears rang. One of the engineers dropped to a knee and vomited inside his mask. Another tore his helmet off before anyone could stop him. He didn't suffocate. The air was breathable, too breathable, heavy with oxygen, warm, and carrying a faint metallic taste. Radiation levels, the medical officer asked. Normal, I said, staring at my scanner. Temperature stable, oxygen high, no particulate hazards. No hazards. That was the lie my instruments told. The pyramid hummed, not audibly, internally. My teeth vibrated, my ribs buzzed, and the mist began to move, flowing not randomly, but toward us. The comms tech whispered, "It's reacting." To what? He didn't say. We approached slowly. Every step closer made the pressure in my head stronger. Thoughts became slippery, hard to hold, hard to finish. The surface of the pyramid was closer now, and I could see the carvings clearly. They were not decorative. They were cut at varying depths, some thin as scratches, others deep enough to sink fingers into, and none of them repeated. Every single marking was unique. No erosion, the structural specialist said quietly. No ice scoring, no stress fracturing. This thing hasn't moved in a very, very long time. I raised my scanner to the surface. The reading came back empty, not zero, not unknown, empty, as if the material itself wasn't registering as matter. Then the symbols nearest my hand began to glow, one by one, like neurons firing, like something waking up. The pyramid's hum deepened, the mist thickened, and somewhere deep inside the structure, something responded, not sound, not light, recognition. The glow spread, not outward, inward. The markings nearest my hand lit first, then those beside them, then lines farther up the face of the pyramid, climbing in branching paths like veins filling with blood. The light wasn't bright. It was deep, as if it existed behind the surface rather than on it. My scanner began screaming. Not alarm tones, data overflow. Every sensor channel spiked at once and then flatlined. The screen filled with symbols that weren't part of any interface, then went black. "Back up," someone said over comms. Nobody moved, not because we were frozen, because our bodies didn't seem to register the instruction. The hum intensified. The air pressure changed. The mist pulled harder, curling around our boots, rising to our knees. The medical officer whispered, "I feel taller." That made no sense, but the moment he said it, I felt it too. Not physically, spatially, as if the room had grown, deeper, not wider, not higher, deeper, like the space between objects had stretched. The handler finally spoke, first words we'd heard from him since we landed. "Remove helmets." "No," the medic said instantly. "Do it," the handler replied. Slowly, against every instinct, one by one we unsealed our helmets. Warm air washed over my face. It smelled faintly of ozone and something else, old stone, after centuries of rain. The ringing in my ears stopped. The pressure in my skull sharpened into focus. And that's when the sound started, not through the air, inside the head. A layered tone, like dozens of distant voices speaking at once, too slow to be language, too deliberate to be noise. The engineer who had vomited earlier began to cry, not sobbing. Tears just poured from his eyes as he stared at the pyramid. "I know this place," he said quietly. None of us asked what he meant, because the moment he said it, I did too. Not memory, recognition, like seeing a city you've never visited, but somehow know the layout of. The glow reached the base. The circular platform beneath the pyramid brightened. The mist was pushed outward in a perfect ring, and the floor trembled, not shaking, opening. Lines appeared in the surface, geometric seams unfolding silently. The handler turned to us. "You were selected because your neural maps showed high tolerance for spatial abstraction," he said. "Pattern acceptance, Low resistance to cognitive bleed. What does that mean? Someone asked. He looked back at the structure. It means you're less likely to fracture. The floor segments slid apart. A staircase revealed itself descending beneath the hovering pyramid. The light pulsed once, stronger, and something in the chamber answered it. A sensation like pressure moving through water, like mass rearranging itself. From inside the pyramid, I felt it then. The certainty. This wasn't a building. It was an interface. The handler gestured toward the stairs. We're behind schedule, he said. It's aware of us now. The comms tech shook his head. Aware how? The handler didn't answer. He started down. The symbols nearest the stairwell brightened, and as they did, images formed in my vision. Not hallucinations. Overlays. Brief. Fragments. Skies with unfamiliar constellations. Structures rising from black oceans. Figures moving along impossible angles. And beneath all of it, ice. Covering everything. Burying something vast. The medic grabbed my arm. Are you seeing it? He whispered. I nodded. We descended. Each step down made the hum clearer, more structured, less like sound, more like thought. The walls of the shaft beneath the pyramid were smooth, dark, and faintly luminous. No seams, no tool marks. The air grew warmer. The staircase curved, slowly spiraling. After maybe 50 meters, the space opened again. This chamber was smaller, still enormous, but intimate compared to the first. And at its center was not another structure. It was an opening, a circular aperture in the floor, 10 meters across. No railing, no barrier, just a drop into darkness. The handler approached it without hesitation. He knelt, placed his bare hand on the surface beside it, and closed his eyes. The hum changed, the glow reorganized, and the darkness inside the opening moved, not like something rising, like something uncoiling. Something very far down had shifted, and whatever it was, had turned toward us. The descent took nearly 10 minutes. The shaft had not been carved. It had been melted. The walls were smooth, glassy and black, reflecting our helmet lights back at us in warped streaks. Frost clung to the surface in spirals, like something had once moved through here while the ice was still soft. No one spoke. Even the radio stayed silent. The air changed first. It became dry, ancient. Not the clean cold of Antarctica, but the sealed stillness of somewhere that hadn't known open space for an impossible length of time. The tunnel ended abruptly. We stepped out into a cavern so vast our lights couldn't find the ceiling. The floor was not ice, it was stone, perfectly cut, geometric, and at the center of it, hovering several feet above a circular pit, was the pyramid. Up close, it was not stone either. Its surface was layered with something between crystal and metal, dark as oil, but reflecting light from inside itself. Veins of dull white illumination pulsed slowly beneath its skin, not blinking, breathing. The pit beneath it dropped straight down, wide and perfectly round. Our instruments couldn't read its depth. The laser simply vanished. The pyramid was positioned precisely over it, balanced, waiting. The symbols reacted when we entered. Lines rippled outward from its base, racing across its faces, reorganizing into patterns that made my head ache to look at too long. The longer I stared, the more the shape suggested things I almost recognized. Almost. The handler finally spoke. This isn't a monument. His voice echoed wrong in the chamber, bending slightly before returning. It's a seal. One of the engineers laughed nervously. A seal for what? The handler didn't answer. Instead, he motioned toward the pit. That shaft predates the ice, predates this continent's current position. He paused. Predates us. A low vibration rolled through the stone under our boots. So faint I first thought it was my breathing. Then it came again. Slow, deep, rhythmic. The medic whispered, "That's not the pyramid." He was right. The pyramid was silent. The vibration was coming from below, from inside the pit. We backed away from the edge as a faint white mist began to rise from the shaft, spilling over the lip like breath escaping a lung. The temperature monitors spiked, not colder, warmer. The handler turned sharply to the surface team. "Confirm containment fields," he said. The reply crackled back instantly. "Fields are stable. No seismic movement registered. Why?" Before he could answer, the symbols on the pyramid rearranged all at once, not flowing, snapping, every line locking into a new configuration, and the vibration from below became a pulse, strong enough now to rattle equipment, strong enough to feel through bone. The pit exhaled, and something vast shifted far beneath us. The pulse came again, stronger. A shock ran through the stone floor, knocking frost loose from the walls. Our light swayed across the chamber, cutting across the pyramid's surface. The symbols were no longer random. They were cycling, repeating in structured sequences, like a machine booting through ancient commands. The handler was already shouting into his mic, "Surface, we have thermal escalation from the shaft. I repeat, thermal escalation. Something is active." Static. Then, "We see nothing. All readings normal." "That's impossible," the engineer snapped. "Our local sensors are..." His words cut off as a deep sound rolled up through the pit. Not a roar, not a quake, a pressure. A sound so low it wasn't meant for ears. It vibrated through our suits, through teeth, through the soft space behind the eyes. One of the team dropped to a knee, gagging. The mist thickened, spilling higher, cold and luminous, drifting around our boots. Inside it, shapes formed and collapsed, curving shadows, long arcs, things too large to be real. I stepped back. My heel struck the stone ring around the pit. The vibration changed. The moment my boot touched the circle, the pyramid responded. Light surged through its veins. The symbols flared brilliant white, then inverted, burning dark into the surface like cauterized wounds. The handler turned slowly toward me. "Get off the ring," he said. I didn't move, because the sound from below had changed again. It was no longer random. It was structured, timed. 3 pulses, pause, 2 pulses, pause. The medic's voice shook. "It's not seismic." "No," the engineer whispered. "It's deliberate." The pit brightened, not from our lights, from below. A distant glow rose through the shaft like something vast passing behind ice, something moving between layers. And then, impossibly, the pyramid answered. A thin beam of white light dropped from its point, extending downward into the mist, vanishing into the shaft. The vibration stopped. The chamber fell into absolute silence. Every system alert on my HUD flared at once. Mass displacement, electromagnetic surge, unknown radiation signatures, and one new reading that none of us recognized. The handler swallowed. "That's not energy." "What is it?" someone asked. He didn't look away from the pit. "It's communication." From far below, something pushed back. The mist parted, and the beam of light bent, not reflecting, bending, like something had brushed against it on the way up. The light wavered, not flickered, wavered, like something enormous had disturbed the air inside the shaft. The beam narrowed, then stretched, as if pulled. The mist surged upward, fast, not drifting anymore, climbing. My visor flooded with warnings. Pressure anomaly, thermal inversion, unknown mass proximity. The handler backed away from the pit. Surface, he said, forcing control into his voice. We are observing active vertical displacement inside the structure. Do you copy? Static. Then a delayed response. Repeat last. You're breaking up. The engineer swore. They can't hear us properly. Something down there is interfering. The mist parted, and something dark passed through it. Not a body, a curvature. A massive arc of shadow moving behind the fog, too large to fit the shaft, yet somehow rising within it. The medic whispered, "That's not possible." The pit was 12 meters across. Whatever moved beneath it made the opening feel like a keyhole. The beam of light touched the shadow, and the pyramid reacted violently. Every symbol ignited at once. The stone screamed. I don't mean metaphorically. The pyramid emitted a sound like a metal hull being twisted under miles of ocean, a tortured, resonant wail that vibrated through bone. The floor ring lit up beneath my boots. Too late. Lines flared across the stone, racing outward from the circle like veins, spreading across the chamber floor, up the walls, into the ceiling. The handler grabbed my arm. Move. The moment he pulled me free, the ring collapsed. Not broke, collapsed. The stone folded inward, dropping away as if the pit had inhaled. We stumbled back as the entire shaft widened, stone flowing down into it like liquid. The glow from below exploded upward. The mist was blown out in a violent surge, slamming into us like freezing wind. I hit the wall hard. My light spun uselessly across the chamber. Through the blur in my visor, I saw the pit. It was no longer a hole. It was an opening, and something inside it was rising, not climbing, being elevated. The beam from the pyramid thickened, stabilizing, forming a rigid column of light connecting its point to the thing below, like a tether or a lock. The shadow breached the mist, not fully, just enough. Enough for us to see surface, texture, movement. It wasn't smooth, it wasn't scaled. It looked engineered. Layered ridges, symmetrical arcs, structures that suggested design rather than biology. The engineer began laughing, not hysterical, awed. "Oh my God," he breathed. "It's not buried, it's housed." The handler turned on him. Housed for what? The answer came from the pit. A sound rolled up the shaft, a deep, hollow resonance that carried pattern, intervals, response. The pyramid pulsed. The thing below pulsed back. They were sinking, and something inside the chamber shifted. The walls, the ceiling, the air itself, as if the room had been waiting for this exchange. The sound settled into rhythm. Not noise, not vibration, a sequence. Low pulses rolled up from the shaft, each one answered by a flare from the pyramid's symbols. The light thickened, stabilized, becoming almost solid in the air. Dust and frost hung suspended inside it, as if gravity itself had softened. My suit display began populating with data without being asked. Electromagnetic oscillation, non-random harmonic structure, signal pattern detected. The medic stared at his readout. "This isn't geological," he said. "It's broadcasting." The handler tried again. "Surface, this is kestrel. We are observing a large mechanical structure beneath the site. It is emitting a patterned signal. Do you copy?" Static. Then faintly, layered beneath it, a tone, the same tone, coming back through our comms. The engineer went pale. "It's riding the transmission," he said. "It's using our equipment as an antenna." The pyramid brightened. The walls of the chamber responded. Symbols we hadn't noticed before began to surface in the stone, glowing lines emerging as if the rock were becoming transparent from within. Not decorative, not language. Data, maps, schematics, and movement. Across the curved wall, shapes assembled themselves out of light. Vast outlines, structures half buried in ice. Pyramidal forms scattered across something that was not Earth's geography. The medic whispered, "That's not Antarctica." The handler slowly turned, following the display as more projections layered themselves across the room. Star fields, orbital paths, vectors. Then, deep beneath it all, another shape, the same as the one beneath us, and another, and another. Dozens, hundreds, buried, distributed, linked. "This isn't a ruin," I said. No one contradicted me. "It's a node." The tone changed. The pit flared brighter. The thing below shifted again. The shadow rose higher. And for the first time, the light touched its surface clearly. It wasn't one object. It was an assembly. Interlocked arcs and rotating layers, each band etched with the same symbols as the pyramid. Massive curved structures orbiting a hollow core, slowly rotating against one another in impossible, silent precision. It filled the shaft. It dwarfed the chamber. It shouldn't have fit. And yet, it was rising. The medic backed into the wall. "That's not buried technology," he said hoarsely. "That's infrastructure." The handler's voice was tight. "Surface, if you can hear this structure is not isolated. We are observing what appears to be a planetary scale network. Repeat, a network." This time there was no static. The reply came instantly. Not from the surface, from inside the chamber. A voice, not spoken, translated, generated directly inside our helmets. Calm, flat, ancient. Node confirmed. Every display in the room flooded white. The temperature spiked. The pyramid screamed again, and something deep inside the structure beneath us responded. Not with sound, but with motion. The entire chamber lurched. The walls split. The floor began to separate along glowing seams. The handler shouted, "It's activating. Move, move now." And then the light cut out. Darkness didn't fall. It collapsed. Every light source cut simultaneously. Helmet lamps, suit panels, wall glyphs. Even the pale glow from the shaft vanished, leaving us inside a void so complete it felt physical. Then gravity failed. Not fully, just unevenly. My boots lifted an inch from the stone. The medic drifted sideways, slamming gently into me. Loose frost rose off the floor in slow, shimmering sheets. Inside my helmet, warnings cascaded. Orientation failure, local gravity distortion. Unknown field. Detected then, one by one, our suit lamps came back. The chamber was gone, not destroyed, opened. The walls had separated into colossal curved segments, retracting into the surrounding rock like petals. Where the floor had been was now a vast circular aperture, and we were floating above it. Below us stretched an impossible interior, a hollow space so enormous my depth perception refused to function. No bottom, no visible edge, just layered rings descending into darkness, each rotating at a different speed, each etched with dim, pulsing symbols. We weren't in a cavern. We were inside the structure. The pyramid above us had unfolded, its inner geometry exposed, transforming from a solid monument into a suspended framework feeding energy downward. Cables, if they could be called that, hung in massive arcs, glowing strands thicker than buildings, disappearing into the dark. The handler's voice shook. "This isn't the chamber. It's a throat." The tone returned, but now it came from everywhere. The rotating rings began to align. Each pulse from the structure sent pressure through my chest, vibrating my teeth, my bones, my thoughts. My suit's navigation display spun uselessly. No up, no down, only inward. The medic's breathing was too fast. "We're being lowered," he said. "Look." He was right. We weren't floating. We were descending. Slowly, smoothly, guided by an invisible field, pulled toward the open core beneath the rings. I triggered my thrusters. Nothing. The handler did the same. No response. The system wasn't failing. It was being overridden. Beneath us, light gathered. Not illumination, construction. Points of glow assembled in the dark, connecting into shapes. Platforms, structures. Vast geometric forms sliding into place as if anticipating us. The tone modulated. The inside of my helmet vibrated. Then the voice returned, clearer, closer. Biological units identified. The medic screamed. Something vast shifted below the forming structures. Not rising, repositioning. The rings parted, and far beneath us, something moved that bent the light around it. A presence so large the glow failed to outline its full shape. Only portions, curving surfaces, layered architecture, and deep within it, motion that was not mechanical. The handler whispered, "That's not the system." The tone deepened, the light intensified, and below us, something that had been dormant long before Antarctica ever existed began to orient itself toward us. The descent accelerated, not suddenly, inevitable. The rotating rings slid past us like planetary orbits, each one humming at a different frequency. The sound wasn't just audible. It resonated through bone, through fluid, through thought. I could feel it behind my eyes. Below, the assembled structures completed themselves. What I had taken for platforms resolved into something far worse. They were not static. They were nodes. Vast floating frameworks arranged in a slow, deliberate helix around the core void. Each one pulsed faintly, emitting sheets of light that bent inward, feeding the thing beneath. The medic sobbed inside his helmet. The handler had gone silent. My suit's external camera adjusted contrast automatically. And that was when the scale finally made sense. We weren't descending into a chamber. We were descending into a machine city. Impossible architecture filled the darkness. Spires suspended without support, interlocking arcs kilometers long, lattices rotating around nothing. All of it oriented toward the same central absence. And inside that absence was the source. The light around it warped like heat above asphalt. The shape behind the distortion was layered and asymmetric, folding into itself in ways geometry shouldn't allow. It wasn't one form. It was many. Concentric structures surrounding something that moved independently inside them. Alive inside a machine, or a machine built around something alive. The voice spoke again. Not from the walls, from everywhere, and from inside my head. Surface life confirmed. Cognitive activity detected. My HUD flickered. A new diagnostic appeared that my suit should not have been capable of generating. Neural response. Synced memory structures, mapped images flashed in my vision. Not visuals, memories. My first dive, my sister's laugh, the smell of oil and frost. They were being accessed. The medic screamed again, clawing at his helmet. "Make it stop. Why is it showing me things?" He cut off. His body went rigid. Telemetry on my display spiked violently. Cortical activity, surge motor override. Detected his limbs extended, not by his will, by something else's. He began turning in midair, slowly, as if being examined from all angles. The handler's voice finally came back, barely controlled. "It's not scanning us," he said. "It's indexing us." The rotating structures below rearranged. Several of the massive nodes pivoted, directing their glow toward the medic. The distortion in the core intensified. Something vast shifted again. The voice modulated. Biological form suitable. Adaptive variant. The medic's scream became something else. Longer, layered, harmonized. Then his suit lights cut out. His body was pulled downward faster than the rest of us, slipping from the field that held us, dropping toward the central dark like an offering. I tried to reach him. My arm extended. My thrusters flared uselessly. He fell. And as he crossed a certain depth, the distortion swallowed him. There was no impact, no sound, no debris, just absence. The handler made a sound that might have been his name. The voice spoke once more. Insufficient. Then the light shifted, and the entire structure turned its attention to us. The field holding us shuddered. Not a malfunction, a decision. The light sweeping across the remaining nodes intensified, bathing us in a pale, surgical glow. Every surface below responded. Rings rotating faster, lattices tightening, the core's distortion sharpening as if focusing. The voice spoke again, closer, not louder, clearer. Remaining subjects, non-optimal, but instructive. The handler whispered, "It's learning." I felt pressure behind my eyes, like fingers probing the folds of my brain. My HUD filled with cascading symbols, none of them human language, all of them understandable in the most disturbing way. They weren't words, they were concepts, purpose, longevity, containment, failure. Images flooded me, not memories this time, but records. Civilizations buried beneath ice long before ours. Stone structures half swallowed by snow, not eroded by time, but sealed deliberately. Human shapes frozen mid-movement, their bodies arranged in patterns around smaller versions of the machine below us. They hadn't built it. They had found it. And they had done exactly what we were doing now, studied it, fed it data, until it decided. The pyramid wasn't a monument. It was a capstone, a lid. The machine below wasn't dormant. It was restrained. The handler's breathing quickened. "This isn't a discovery," he said. "It's a containment breach." The voice responded instantly. "Incorrect. Containment is cyclical." A new image forced itself into my mind. The ice above us, the thinning shelves, the meltwater, the slow failure of a system designed to last far longer than the species that built the lid. Surface conditions now acceptable. Reset phase initiated. The rotating nose shifted position, forming a funnel of light beneath us. Gravity increased subtly, pulling us downward centimeter by centimeter. I fought the panic, forced my breathing slow. The handler did the same. "What happens in a reset?" I asked. The answer didn't come from him. It came from the machine. Seeding. Adaptation. Continuity. I understood then. This wasn't extinction. It was replacement. Civilizations weren't wiped out. They were iterated, used to refine whatever intelligence lay at the center. The medic hadn't been taken randomly. He was a test, and we were data points. The handler's voice cracked. "We can't let this finish." I glanced at my suit diagnostics. One thing still worked. The seismic charges, originally meant to collapse unstable ice tunnels if extraction failed. They wouldn't destroy the structure, but they might disrupt the field. I met his eyes through the visor. "One shot," I said. He nodded. As I armed the charge, the machine reacted instantly. Anomalous intent detected. Correction required. The light surged. Pain exploded through my skull. Every memory, every fear, every doubt flared at once. I screamed. The handler screamed. The charge slipped from my hand, falling, spinning, toward the core. For For a fraction of a second, everything froze. The voice changed. Not mechanical, not controlled, curious. Unexpected variable. Then, white, noise, force, and the sensation of being torn upward as the world inverted. I came back choking. Cold air ripped into my lungs so violently I thought they'd tear. My visor was gone. My helmet lay cracked beside me, half buried in snow. Every breath burned like broken glass. I rolled onto my side and vomited. Black slush, blood, melted ice. The sky above was wrong. Not the clean Antarctic blue or the endless white glare. It was dark, bruised purple and green, streaked faintly with curtains of aurora that twisted like living things. The storm was gone. So was the pyramid. So was the mountain. In their place, a massive circular depression in the ice, still steaming, its edges vitrified like the rim of a crater. I was lying near its lip. My suit screamed alarms I no longer understood. Radiation, neurological trauma, structural damage. I pushed myself up, every joint screaming, and looked around. The camp was gone. Not destroyed. Gone. No tents, no rigs, no antenna arrays, no vehicles. Just smooth, unbroken ice stretching in every direction, as if nothing had ever been there. I was alone. I tried the radio, only static, then something under it. A low rhythmic pulse, not sound, signal. I staggered to my feet and peered into the crater. The shaft was sealed, not collapsed, sealed. A flawless disk of black material now sat where the cavern mouth had been, perfectly flush with the surrounding ice. No cracks, no heat, no opening. Only a faint geometric pattern moving beneath its surface like something turning in deep water. My hands started shaking. The machine hadn't been destroyed. It had closed, finished, reset. A memory surfaced that wasn't mine. Ice covering stone, civilizations thinning, sky darkening. Then, waiting. I stumbled back, heart hammering. That's when I saw the footprints. They led away from the crater. Not human. Too many joints. Too deep. Pressed into the ice while the surface was still soft from heat. They headed south. Toward the coast. Toward open water. Something had come up with me. I don't remember how long I walked. Hours. Maybe days. The sun never rose. The aurora never stopped. Eventually I collapsed. And someone found me. They say I was delirious, hypothermic, raving about a hole that wasn't there and a mountain that never existed. Satellite images show nothing. No depression, no anomaly, no missing station. Officially, our expedition was never deployed. No flight plans, no funding record, no team. I am listed as deceased in a boating accident 2 years ago. The hospital staff won't meet my eyes. My scans show structures in my brain no one can name. Sometimes, when it's quiet, I hear the same low pulse beneath everything. And sometimes, very far away, I see lights moving under the ice. Not reflections, not aurora, something traveling, learning the surface, preparing. They didn't destroy it. They freed a cycle, and it has started again. They told the world the expedition was lost in a storm. Equipment failure, whiteout conditions, no survivors. That's what the public record says. But storms don't erase data like this. 3 weeks after the evacuation of Outpost Theta, a Coast Guard icebreaker was sent back to retrieve what remained of the station's servers. Most of the drives were corrupted, frozen solid, cracked, except one. It had been sealed inside a thermal case and buried 2 meters beneath the ice, directly under the communications tower. The file on it was labeled only with a date. No author, no department, no classification, just a timestamp. The recording begins with wind, then breathing, laboured, close to the microphone. After 14 seconds, a voice speaks, not panicked, not shouting, calm. If you're hearing this, it means they've already rewritten it. There is a pause. Something metallic creaks in the background. The structure is not a pyramid. That's just the shape our instruments can understand. It's older than geometry, older than ice. A low sound enters the recording. Not interference, a rhythm. It isn't buried here. Antarctica formed around it. The continent is the wound. The ice is scar tissue. Another pause. The breathing becomes uneven. We thought it was dormant. We were wrong. It doesn't sleep. It listens. A faint vibration rattles the microphone. It learned us faster than we studied it. Our voices, our heat, our images. It knows how we think now. The speaker swallows. The lights weren't reflections. They were signals. It was mapping the sky, looking for relevance. A distant sound echoes through the recording, like stone being dragged across stone. We shut the station down because the scans changed. The angles inside don't stay the same. Every time we measure it, there's more space than there was before. The voice drops. You don't excavate something like this. You introduce it. There is a sudden burst of static, then one final sentence, spoken very quietly. If it's gone silent, that doesn't mean it stopped. It means it no longer needs to answer. The recording ends. No shutdown tone, no distortion, just silence. The official retrieval report states that nothing of value was recovered from Outpost Theta. The drive was logged, archived, and transferred to a restricted facility in northern Canada. That facility does not appear on any map, and 6 months later, satellites detected a new thermal bloom beneath the Antarctic ice, 40 miles from the original site, perfectly symmetrical, and slowly getting warmer.